After President Trump agreed to sign a congressional spending deal that included $1.3 billion for barriers along the border with Mexico, the president declared a national emergency to secure billions more in funding. But now, as CBS's Mark Lieberman reports, the president faces opposition on several sides.
President Trump appears prepared to issue his first veto if Congress votes to block his national emergency declaration along the border with Mexico.
He's going to protect his national emergency declaration, guaranteed.
White House senior advisor Stephen Miller said on Fox News Sunday the president has the right to take action on the border under the National Emergencies Act of 1976.
If the president can't defend this country, then he cannot fulfill his constitutional oath of office.
The president declared the national emergency on Friday. Lawmakers refused to provide the billions of dollars he demanded for his border wall. The move would free up about $8 billion for the wall by shifting it away from the Defense Department and other agencies.
Sadly, we'll be sued, and sadly, it'll go through a process, and happily we'll win, I think.
Democratic Senator Chris Coons said on CBS's Face the Nation that Congress needs to defend its power over the budget.
We should not set the terrible precedent of letting a president declare a national emergency simply as a way of getting around the congressional appropriation process.
California's Attorney General told ABC's This Week his state would sue to block the emergency order.
There is enough evidence to show that this is not the 9/11 crisis that we faced back in 2001. It's not the Iran hostage crisis we faced in 1979.
House Democrats have said they plan to introduce a resolution to stop the emergency declaration. Mark Lieberman, CBS News.
The American Civil Liberties Union and Public Citizen, a nonprofit watchdog group, also say they plan legal action against the emergency declaration. A former University of Montana constitutional law professor says the president might have a better argument under the U.S. Constitution rather than the National Emergency Powers Act. Rob Nadelson is now a senior fellow at the Independence Institute in Denver. He says the president needs to reference another law and cite a specific statute since the Constitution gives the president authority to defend against invasion.
The government of the United States does have the responsibility to repel that invasion, but it's unclear whether the courts would permit the president to do it alone without the support of Congress. One way to make sure that this national emergency passes muster under the National Emergencies Act would be to issue a supplemental declaration saying, I am citing this particular law, but he's got to find a specific statute that authorizes it.
Also in this morning's headlines, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said in a 60 Minutes interview that when President Trump fired James Comey from his FBI director job, a quote, crime may have been committed. After the president fired Comey in May of 2017, the FBI opened an investigation into whether the president was associated with Russia, posing a possible national security threat. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders responded to the allegations in McCabe's interview. She said he was, quote, fired in total disgrace from the FBI because he lied to investigators on multiple occasions, including under oath. And mourners in Aurora, Illinois gathered Sunday to remember the 5 workers killed and 5 police officers injured in Friday's mass shooting at the Henry Pratt Company. The attack began when 45-year-old Gary Martin was fired. Police killed Martin in a gun battle. Back here in Montana, a group of Helena students has helped put together a bill this legislative session that they hope will address gun safety in Montana. MTM's Jonathan Ambarian talked to one of the students about how the legislation came together.
After the deadly school shooting in Parkland, Florida last year, local students formed Helena Youth Against Gun Violence.
I turned the grief that I was feeling for those students and families at Parkland, and I turned it into fuel, and I got involved.
Amanda Penley and other members of the group soon began looking into the possibility of creating legislation to address their concerns about gun safety.
To effect real change, we needed some sort of policy in place.
They contacted local lawmakers who gave them advice on the legislative process. Representative Mafi Funk, a Helena Democrat, connected them with a bill drafter. Eventually, their ideas became House Bill 477. It would create a fine of up to $1,000 if someone leaves a gun unsecured, a child fires it, and it causes death or serious injury to the child or another person. The bill would also require the Montana Office of Public Instruction to develop policies for firearms safety education.
Really, it's about kids when you look at it, and just making sure that, yes, in Montana we own firearms and we're proud of that, and that's great. But also we need to be proud of the fact that we store them responsibly and we keep our children safe.
Funk has agreed to sponsor House Bill 477. Penley said they also made a point of talking to Republicans about their ideas. They added the section on education in response to that input.
We actually have learned so much from asking them questions and hearing their advice on the bill and what they think would work in Montana, as well as for their constituents.
Regardless of what happens with House Bill 477, Penley says this experience has been valuable.
Getting young people involved in politics is huge, and I think it's really important, and I have learned so much throughout this process.
In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
House Bill 477 has been assigned to the House Judiciary Committee. Penley expects it will receive a hearing sometime in mid-March. Meanwhile, this morning's cold temperatures means a delayed start for one area school. Buses for Lame Deer Public Schools will begin running at 8 a.m. and be at their first stops by 8:30. The elementary buses should arrive at the school by 10, and the junior and high school are scheduled to arrive at 10:20. The superintendent says beyond the late start, a normal school day will commence with activities, practices, and games. During the winter, there are many ways to keep your house warm, but those ways are also the leading cause of house fires. Following last week's cold weather, the Billings Fire Department wants to remind everyone of some cold weather safety tips. The department says space heaters are a leading cause of home heating fire deaths. Deputy Fire Marshal Tyrone Morgan advises keeping space heaters 3 feet away from things that can catch on fire, such as furniture, clothing, mattresses, or bedding. He says it's important to make sure heating systems are working properly to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. More information from Morgan is on our website. The Make-A-Wish Foundation grants special wishes to children diagnosed with critical illnesses. And on Saturday night, MSUB athletes wanted to make some of those children feel special. MSUB honored kids along with their families at the halftime of the men's game against Western Washington. After a pizza party between the men's and women's games, 5 Wish kids were given the spotlight and recognized at center court. The Yellow Jacket teams put together a gift basket, and Western Washington players gave some Vikings memorabilia.
It was really awesome. Western Washington showed up tonight, and they had practice jerseys, t-shirts, bags, and signed posters for the Make-A-Wish kids. It is so cool to have connections on and off the court. It just made my heart happy when they showed up with all that stuff.
Our Wish kids all have critical illnesses, and so they are all going through a tough time, or they have been through a really difficult time. So when people from the community get together to celebrate them and to make sure that they know that there's a whole community of people supporting them, I think it's really special. And they're just making our Wish kids feel so celebrated and loved tonight.
The NCAA Division II and the Great Northwest Athletic Conference have been helping Make-A-Wish families since 2003.